I'm excited to share my peach cobbler recipe with you. I get so excited when peaches are in season. Nothing is better than a peach pie in my opinion, but I can't have all that buttery, gluten-y flakiness goodness, so this is the next best thing. And not only are we doing peaches today, we're gonna do it with apples and frozen blueberries. So this is one cobbler topping in 3 ways, and it's going to be gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, it's vegan, and sugar-free. Now, the sweetener in this is this beauty. It's dates. Now, like 1 in 5 people seem to tell me that they don't like dates and they're kind of turned off by my recipes. You cannot taste the date flavor at all. It's just clean sweetness. And the benefit from using a whole date, pit removed of course, is that you have the fiber along with the glucose, and that really has a better effect on our blood sugar. Now, it has a lot of glucose in this date, so you can't go all out on it. I don't crash after I do when I eat just straight sugar. I kind of have an energy level that's even all day long. It doesn't go and then I need a nap. I'm gonna start with the peaches and I'm going to peel them. And I found that this peeler that has little teeth on it is much more effective than anything else. You don't have to put a lot of pressure into it. You just very gently scrape along the top and it just peels easily. You can do this with apples too. Very easy process. See that? And then I'm just going to continue this, slice them and dice them, and sprinkle a little cinnamon in there, and that's it for the peach filling. For the apples, I'm also going to be peeling them with a peeler, and then I'm going to slice them up. And for the apples, they need to steam a little bit on the stove with some cinnamon and a little shot of maple syrup before they go into the oven. Okay, I got 2 small peaches stuffed in here. I just peeled them, sliced them, diced them, sprinkled a little bit of cinnamon on them, and that's it. We're gonna put the topping on and pack it in, and it'll be ready to bake. And for the apples, I love to use Fuji apples because they're my favorite, crispiest, sweetest apple, and they're not mushy ever at all, like a Gala can be. So I have just sliced them up and put some cinnamon on here, and then I'm gonna steam them for a little bit on the stove. And you could just stop right there and have a great delicious snack if you're craving something sweet. I often do this for my kids so they can eat their fruit, and that's it. But for this recipe, we are going to add a little bit of maple syrup, and it's going to caramelize a little bit in the pan as it's steaming, and that will help bring out some more sweetness in this cobbler recipe for the apples. And for the frozen blueberries, you just pour it in your dish and wait for the topping. It's going to be all the same topping on these guys, okay? All right, so I have my apples cooking on a low heat with the lid on with some cinnamon and maple syrup. And I'm gonna turn on my oven to preheat it at 350 degrees. And now we're gonna get started on the topping. So you're gonna need a food processor. And what we're gonna do is start with 2/3 cups of oats divided. So actually we'll start with 1/3 and we're gonna dump that in the food processor and make a finer flour with that. And then we're going to need 6 whole dates. I like to use the ones with a pit in them because they're cheaper to buy. And also, I like to be able to rip them in half and pull out the little top and the pit, which is not hard work at all. It's very simple. And then I just throw this whole thing in the food processor. But you probably want to read your manual on your food processor about dates. Some say you might need to use frozen dates. Mine actually says that, but you know what? I have never done that, and I've never had a problem. But I also like to be able to split them because every once in a while you'll get a rotten date, and it's very disgusting. It's full of this black powder. So if you already buy them pitted, you may not know that, and it's more expensive that way. And it's no problem to just rip it up, put it in there, and then this goes in the trash. You want to use a medjool date. They're the sweetest and softest to process. So I'm going to get my 1/3 cup of rolled oats, and we're going to mix it up so it's a flour. All right, into my oat flour, I am going to put in a teaspoon of flaxseed and a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Also, a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon goes into the food processor. Okay, at this point, I'm going to pulse my food processor a few times to mix it around and then add the 6 pitted dates. My apples are smelling very delicious, so I'm gonna take them off of the stove. So I steamed them up, a little bit of maple syrup and some cinnamon, and they're soft. You don't want them too mushy. This is gonna go into my baking dish. So my dates are in the food processor, and when processing dates, you kind of want to use the pulse mode on your food processor because just pulse it up for a little bit until they're broken up, and then you'll want to run it until it's a coarser mixture. So with the dates all broken up, it looks like this. Next is 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, pure vanilla extract. I'm going to turn the machine on and drizzle it in. And what really makes this cobbler topping taste like it's the real deal is the coconut oil. So if you don't want to use coconut oil, it'll taste pretty healthy, but it's doable. It's still good. But if you want it to be more like an actual pie, you really do need to use the coconut oil. And in this recipe, I use 1/4 cup, but I'm going to reduce it down to 3 tablespoons, and we're going to put that into the food processor. So I melted down some coconut oil, and I'm just going to put 3 tablespoons into the food processor. For the coconut oil, it doesn't matter if you use the refined or unrefined. I like to use the unrefined just because it's less processed, but also because it has that coconut fragrance about it that really makes this dish work well. So the coconut oil is mixed in. Next is the last of the 1/3 cup of oats, and this time we're not going to mix it into a fine powder. We're just going to kind of leave it as rolled oats, but turn on your machine enough to mix it around. All right, here is my cobbler topping. Now you can make this ahead of time if you want to. If you store it in the refrigerator, it will be a little bit more difficult to work with. Right now it's pretty crumbly, so I'm just going to pack that on top of the dishes. But if you want to make it ahead of time, you might have to roll it out a little bit. So it'll be more like a pie crust. So I am going to pack this on to my little ramekins over here. So we're going to start with the blueberry. So I just pack that in there like this. Next is the peach. I just packed it on there. So this topping recipe will make enough for like an 8x8 dish or 4 little ramekins. Next, you're going to want to put it on a baking tray in case it bubbles over in the oven, and so you won't have a mess in your oven. All right, these guys are going in the oven, and you might have to bake the blueberry one a little bit longer, but we're going to start with 15 minutes and see how it goes. This topping is actually delicious raw. You wouldn't even have to bake it if you don't want to. But if you're looking for that pie with that bubbly goodness coming out of there, this will have to be baked. While everything is cooking, I got my food processor cleaned up, so that's done. I have dished them out so that you can see what they look like. This is going to be the peach, and here is the apple. This last weekend, my family and I went hiking, and we stopped off to get these apple cider donuts like we do about every couple of times a year anyway. And they have dairy and gluten in them, and they were pretty delicious. I had 3 little mini ones, but I've been paying for it all week. I get a runny nose after eating gluten. I have skin problems and IBS stuff. So this apple cobbler is much better for me, and it tastes delicious. Those donuts really weren't worth it for me. I am going to dig into the peach because this is my absolute favorite. So, peach cobbler. It's so clean. You know how when you eat something with sugar, it gets your teeth all gritty? This doesn't happen. And it's got enough sweetness, but it's not sickening sweet like a lot of pies can be. This is incredible. And we have our apple here. Apple, I would choose this any day over those mini apple cider donuts. Very good. And then we got our blueberry. Pretty cool. So there's no heaviness that you get from eating some oily dessert like a donut. This is just clean eating, and you can taste it, and it doesn't taste healthy though. The peach, you gotta do it in the summer. Right. You go enjoy, you try this out. Cobbler, 3 ways.